The New York State Board of Regents says schools can no longer use mascots, names, or logos with Native American imagery. This will impact at least 9 different schools in Western New York.
Joining us now to talk more about this is Dr. Montgomery Hill, an assistant professor of Indigenous Studies at the University at Buffalo. Dr. Hill, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So this has been a conversation for a while now. First, let's just start this off with what are your thoughts on the Board of Regents vote?
I think that is a great decision. I think one of the most important things that they're doing with this is taking the step to make sure that Indigenous people will be respected. And that's what this vote represents, really.
What is the response to the other side of the contingent of this decision, of course, the people who have been in opposition of the Board of Regents making this decision, saying many of these school districts, if not all of them, had these names as a way to honor people as opposed to taking advantage of them? What is your response to folks who believe in that frame?
I haven't, for myself, as an Indigenous person, felt that any of those images are especially honorable. And none of the people in my community, none of the people I regularly interact with that are Indigenous feel that way about these particular images. So I feel to claim that these particular images are honorable or in any way presenting a positive image of Native American people, I believe that might be not entirely honest.
Now, some have also said, these mascots, names, and logos, they could also have an effect on students. And, we're talking about schools here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that Indigenous students could definitely be negatively affected by this sort of imagery and having to confront these stereotypes in day-to-day life. And I think
Dr. Hill, I'm curious about what your thoughts are in a situation like Salamanca, for example, where a large portion, the vast majority, over 80% or so, are Native Americans. And of course, they have a Native American mascot. Where do you fall in that situation? Here you have a group made up of mostly Native American students and teachers and staff and others who say they do want to do this, and this is an honor. And that is a very unique situation, of course, because Salamanca is in a community of Native Americans, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That is a really unique situation, especially since I believe like the artist of the mascot himself, like Carson Waterman, I believe it was, is also a member of the community. I think it's evocative of also, like, for example, like the Seminole teams and the Blackhawks. I think it's a very nuanced situation in those particular instances. But you can take that, right, in contrast to the other situations where the majority of the teacher body and the student body is not Indigenous, right? And they have these representations. So I think these corner cases make those cases much more clear-cut.
And quickly, Dr. Hill, to widen the lens on a national scale here, of course, looking at sports teams, we have seen teams like the Washington Commanders who have dropped their imagery, but there are still teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, the Atlanta Braves, who still have their mascots, names, and logos. Is this something we should look into there, too? Should they follow suit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when considering like the Kansas City Chiefs and the promulgation and their use of these really stereotypical images, like the tomahawk chop that they will typically use, is not really positive representation of the Indigenous community.
All right, Dr. Montgomery Hill, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.